Welcome to AP Biology. Today I want to go over photosynthesis with you. So the first thing I want you to do is look at the two equations, the cellular respiration equation and the photosynthesis equation, and notice that the reactants for cellular respiration are the products of photosynthesis, and the products for cellular respiration are the raw materials or reactants for photosynthesis. Difference being the energy, so ATP is the final energy molecule that's made in cellular respiration, so chemical energy is converted to another type of chemical energy, whereas with photosynthesis, light energy is converted to chemical energy. So that's what we're going to be working on. Another thing to notice is that carbon dioxide is inorganic, but glucose is organic, meaning there are two or more carbons put together to make it. So some of the main takeaways from the whole unit. In cellular respiration, you oxidize glucose. In photosynthesis, the reverse is true. You reduce carbon dioxide, meaning you put on electrons and protons to change carbon dioxide from C6H12, right? So you put on the hydrogens. The waste is carbon dioxide for cellular respiration, but you produce glucose in photosynthesis. So this is inorganic versus organic. And so notice they are opposites, right? The products of photosynthesis are the reactants of cellular respiration. Both of them, though, use an electron transport chain. Both of them have carriers. The carrier is somewhat different, but they're still carriers or delivery molecules. They both deliver electrons to an electron transport chain and take electrons off. So in cellular respiration, oxygen is the final electron acceptor and it makes water. In photosynthesis, oxygen is the electron donor and it produces, water is the electron donor and it produces oxygen. So these are backwards from each other. Both of them make a proton gradient, so we'll be looking at that. They both make ATP by chemiosmosis. The difference is that the electrons get their energy from glucose in cellular respiration and from light in photosynthesis. That's where the energy comes from. The electrons themselves come from water in photosynthesis. We call the making of ATP oxidative phosphorylation and a little bit of substrate level phosphorylation. You're missing a P here. And in photosynthesis, the ATP made is made by photophosphorylation. So we'll talk about the difference there. So in cellular respiration, you oxidize glucose first and then set up a proton gradient, whereas, and then you use the proton gradient to make ATP. All of that happens backwards in photosynthesis. So you make the proton gradient first instead of second, and then you use the proton gradient to make ATP, and then you reduce carbon dioxide to make glucose. So it is all really in the opposite order. Okay, so how does a plant obtain raw materials? So you need to know that rain comes down, that's water, and it comes into the soil. And so the water is taken up by the roots. Carbon dioxide is taken up mainly by each of the cells individually, but you can think of the carbon dioxide as coming from the air. Even when it's in the soil, it's because it's present in air, right? Light energy, you need to have some part of the plant exposed to light. So you'll find chloroplasts up here, but you won't find chloroplasts down here. Whoa, so sunlight goes to the leaves and the stem. Stomata are these holes that the leaves and the stem have in them to take in carbon dioxide. Water comes in through the roots generally, and nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, they are generally dissolved in the water that comes in through the roots. And so the uptake from the roots. Okay, so these things are guard cells, two different guard cells here that together make stomata, which are the holes. So here's a hole, here's a hole. On either side are the guard cells. When the guard cells are full of water, the stomata is open, and when they are sort of flaccid, sort of sluggish, they close up and the stomata close up. With them, the holes close up. Okay, some energy molecules, this is ATP, and so you might say, okay, with photosynthesis, you convert plants or any photosynthetic organisms convert light energy to this proton gradient in electrical potential energy to chemical energy when they make ATP, why not just keep the ATP? And the reason is that the ATP molecule is really good at transferring phosphate groups, and so therefore changing the shape of different molecules, like maybe muscles in your like muscle cells, right? Well, the actin and the myosin in your muscle cells, or maybe a channel protein that moves sodium or something like that. But it's ATP is a really good energy transfer molecule, but it's not so great at storing energy long term. So ATP transfers energy very well. This is ATP, right? Here's the sugar ribose. Here's the adenine part. And then here's the triphosphate part, 1, 2, 3 phosphate groups. Notice they're all very negative, and you might remember that negative things don't like each other, and so they tend to push each other apart. So ATP is not good at energy storage. This final phosphate group is pretty likely to come off. So one molecule of glucose stores much, much more chemical energy than one molecule of ATP. So if you're going to store energy, you're going to convert the ATP into glucose, and that's what plants will do. So ATP is made in photosynthesis, but most of it is then converted to glucose. Then there are some carrier molecules you need to know about. So NADPH, think P for photosynthesis, this delivers electrons. Okay, so think of your new delivery molecule here as someone who picks stuff up, in this case, 2 electrons and a hydrogen. So NADP plus picks up 2 high energy electrons and hydrogen ion, a proton, from this thing. We'll talk about the light reactions later, and it'll become NADPH. So NADP plus and NADPH are the same molecule, but one is in the reduced form and one is in the oxidized form. NADPH carries electrons to be passed on to make carbon dioxide into glucose. So you'll need to add hydrogens and electrons to it. Okay, so you might notice, the NADPH here has this extra hydrogen right here, and it's missing the positive charge here. So an electron is taken up there, and then an extra electron and proton are taken up there. So this is the form that's reduced. It's got an extra proton and electron and an extra electron here, and NADP plus is the oxidized form. So when you put extra electrons on here and extra hydrogens, then this one can give the electrons to carbon dioxide to make glucose, right, with the hydrogen.